So we are so pleased to be running part 2 of this online launch. We had part 1 last week, which featured our fabulous book. Can you see it? Is it the right way? It's kind of happening. Here we go. Okay, have I frozen, Trish? No, I don't think so. Okay. Can someone just give me the thumbs up? Can you hear me? Yay, all right. Okay, brilliant. All right. So the book is still at the printers. We are waiting with anticipation for our first copies to get to Protea, from where they'll be distributed to the stores. We're so excited about One Life and incredibly excited about our 20 authors that we've featured in this collection. So as I said, we had part 1 last week, and this week we're having the second lot of writers. And it's just so wonderful to see everybody, to introduce you to each other. What we're going to do, as far as the format is concerned, is we're going to introduce each of you. We're going to read the short bio note that we have for you. And then we're going to be asking you a couple of questions about your story, and then you'll be reading a couple of paragraphs. And this is basically to give everyone who's joined us an idea of the diversity of the book, of the variety and range of the stories, and also of your own personal unique styles. And we hope by the end of the launch that you've got a good idea of at least some of the stories. And welcome to everyone who was here last week as well. We're so pleased to see you again. I'd like to just thank All About Writing for having done these launches online for us, and also for having done our power workshops, which went very well. So we now already have our next anthology on the go. And then also I want to thank Karina Szczurek so much. She's here with us this evening, and she's going to be dealing with the writers whom she edited. So it is so great to see you, Karina. I always love working with you. You've got an eye for talent, your editing is impeccable, and it always just makes things so much easier to do it as a team. So thank you for being here. And I think that's all I'm going to say. We've got, I think, 11 writers on our roll tonight, including, I hope, Lerato Moletsane, who's going to be here, representing her dear son, Chidiso, who is very sadly no longer with us, but we have posthumously printed his story. Okay, and there I see Lerato has just joined us. So Lerato, if you can hear me, just a special welcome to you. I know that this might not be easy for you, but we are just so pleased that you are here representing Chidiso. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Karina, who's going to start our writers' cabaret for the evening.
So, good evening, everyone. How lovely to see your friendly faces, and not only to see you via black and white words. And I want to apologize for not being here last week to those of you who joined as well last week, because I actually had a real live launch of another book in Cold Bay Books. So I had to be physically present there. And as an introduction, I would just like to express my gratitude to all the writers, because it is always just so wonderful to see talent emerging, but also celebrating established writers. And I want to in particular say thank you to the writers who worked with me on the stories for this collection, and thank you for your incredible patience and kindness, because this wasn't an easy process for me, but you have been just wonderful to work with, and I'm deeply grateful for that. I just need to ask Joanne, do we have Lerato Moletsane with us?
Lerato Moletsane, I haven't seen Lerato join us. Lerato, are you here? I tell you what, Karina, why don't you just start and
I will
then
continue because I wanted to start with her because I wanted to
with
go
her. See, yeah,
in
yeah,
chronological
okay.
order how the writers feature in the book, but I
Yeah.
can then proceed to
So yeah, look,
Carmen.
and yeah, sadly, Lerato said she might not be able to make it tonight. That's why she came to last week's launch. So I'd hope we do see her, but we'll just have to play that one by ear. So
Okay, you will let me know if she comes
I
in.
will. Okay.
Yeah, so we are going to then go to Carmen. Carmen, is it Gee or G? You have to unmute yourself, Carmen.
Sorry, it's G. Some people say Gia, but it's not Gia, it's G.
Okay, so Carmen Gee, who hails from the Eastern Cape, is no stranger to the written word, thanks to her background in copywriting and travel blogging. She's also proud to be a regular contributor to Blunt magazine. While a few of her short stories have already been published in local anthologies, it's her dream to see her name on the spine of a novel one day. And I hope that we will all witness that moment. From performing on circus stages to sailing a hand-built yacht across the Atlantic, Carmen lives a life that oftentimes feels stranger than fiction. Drawing inspiration from her colorful cast of characters she has met along the way, she weaves surprising tales that aim to inspire. And one of these tales is the story of a very young woman who is a bartender and has a very surprising encounter with a man who feels extremely dodgy in the beginning, but turns out to be somebody else than one expects. And this is what I wanted to ask you about your story. That in a sense, with every paragraph that one reads, one expects that something horrific is going to happen. You have this expectation, this is going to go horribly wrong. And yet, without spoilers, it goes into other surprising directions. And I wanted to ask you, were you ever tempted to take it into a very wrong turn? Or was it always clear for you that it's going to develop this way?
So my story is called The Artist's Assistant, and this character you're speaking of, he is referred to as the artist. He is never given a name throughout the story, and because he's inspired by someone that I do know in real life, and yes, he is extremely ambiguous. And when you first meet him, you'll probably be terrified, but the more you get to know him, you realize he's actually quite harmless. So I think because he is inspired by someone I know, I kind of always knew that there would be a potentially happy ending because I think the ending is still a little bit open-ended.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in the kind of note at the end of the story where you write about what inspired the story, you mentioned, when I was in my early 20s, I said yes to just about everything, and this led me down a few fascinating rabbit holes. So I need to ask, can you tell us one of those fascinating rabbit holes?
Yes. So like I said, when I was in my early 20s, I was a little bit crazy. I always felt like I was running out of time. Like each day I was getting older and I just wanted to do as much as I could. I think one of those rabbit holes had to be, it is listed in my bio, but sailing the hand-built boat across the Atlantic. We ended up getting attacked by pirates off the coast of Brazil. We're tied up. Everything was taken from us, and I just still stayed on the boat and cruised for about a year. I'm definitely one of those people that your parents warn you about. They'll say, "Look at that girl; she took a gap year, and now she has a gap year."
And I suppose it's wonderful fodder for the novel that you are already writing, or not?
Yes, I actually do. I have it's finished. I just need to edit.
Okay, well, wonderful. Then
Yes.
can we please have a taste of your writing? Would you please share a few paragraphs from your story with us?
Okay, great. Let's go. What had first seemed like an outlandish vision had now been completely brought to life. The artworks were cohesive, poignant, fascinating. The wallpaper was the perfect shade of green. I could feel my horizons broadening. There was more to life, and I could do something else instead of being a glorified beer vending machine. I could be an assistant. The artist smiled widely for the first time as he took in the final results, a charming, tobacco-stained grin. You're a natural, he said, looking around. At what? I asked. Manual labor? He laughed. It's more than that. You have the right touch. And the buyers, he said, looking at me up and down, the buyers might like you. What does that have to do with it? I asked, rolling my eyes. It's your art, I just framed it. It's my art, yes, but you'll be selling it for me. So make sure to wear something nice.
And what she wears will have to be discovered when everybody else reads the story. Thank you so much, Carmen. I think I would like to...
Thank you so much.
I would
Karina,
like to...
sorry,
Yes?
just to interject, I think Lerato has joined us. I think that was Lerato Moletsane. So,
Okay.
Lerato, are you here, Lerato?
And maybe she has to unmute herself because I don't see her picture.
Okay.
So at the top,
All right.
Lerato, can you please unmute yourself if you are with us?
I'm not Lerato Moletsane.
Ah, yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can. But we have two.
You don't want to see.
Lerato Moletsane.
No.
No. This is the other Lerato. So Lerato, we are waiting for, because we have two Leratos in with us, or hopefully with us tonight. Is the other one here, Lerato Moletsane? No, I think that we will then. May I ask you, Joanne, to then
Yes, okay.
introduce
Apologies
Don
for that. Apologies. I thought she had joined. Okay, sorry. Back to you.
Well, I would like to hand over to you if Don is here. Is Don with us?
Yes, I am here. Hello.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Hello to everyone. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Okay. But I can't hear you.
Joanne, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. I was okay. Apologies. I'm now unmuted. Don, we can hear you. We can see you. I hope everyone can see and hear me. Great to see you. Yes, and your story. Well, first, just to follow our format, I'd like to tell people a little bit about you. You're a book critic based in the south of Joburg. Your training is in journalism. You have a BTech from the then Pretoria Technikon, and your first newsroom stint was at the Drum a few decades after your heroes of the 1950s generation had long left and the magazine had changed hands from Jim Bailey to the Afrikaner media giant Naspers. And then for the next 2 decades, you wrote for mainstream newspapers where your bias towards literary journalism gained traction. And you have a master's degree in creative writing from Wits University. So, yeah, and you said that you write fiction to get high. So,
Yeah.
were you high when you wrote your short story Nirvana, which is really the tale of 2 elderly storytellers in an old age home? So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about these gentlemen. What makes them enemies? What makes them friends? What is so poignant about their story?
Look, yes, thank you very much, Joanne. Look, I've always wondered out loud about what happens to great minds, as they age, and ride into the sunset, so to speak. The beautiful mind of a nuclear physicist, the brains of a former school principal. What happens to those people in the sad event that they do not meet with their intellectual equals, you know, in an old home. I sit here at home, you know, I'm 60 now. I sit here at home with my partner, and I love the things we talk about. I benefit a great deal. You know, she talks about nursing. I talk about journalism. I talk about news. I talk about writing, running, and golf. You know, she tells me about things that interest her, things that drew me to her. You know, we talk about events in the world. We talk about friends. But what happens to a great mind as the body atrophies? You know, what is likely to happen to you if you find that you are surrounded by people who don't bring out the best in you? You know, because surely I could choose my partner, I could choose my life partner, you know, but you can never choose a fellow inmate in an old age home. You don't know who's going to share the room next to yours, you know, and you know, it is often taboo for Black Africans like me. I can't. My mother died in 1996. May God bless her beautiful soul. But I do not imagine that I would have put her in an old age home. But it is becoming fashionable now, you know, for Blacks to move their parents and seniors to old age homes. You know, I come from a culture where we learned from our elders. You know, they told us bedtime stories. You know, we would sit around the fire, especially in Lesotho, where my folks come from, and we will hear stories of their younger days. You know, fascinating tales. You know, very interesting stories that that would build me. What happens if I find that there is no one, not one person, who speaks the kind of things that I want to hear? So, in an old age home, I'm imagining one where Bralivai Majosi, an old gangster, you know, with very little education, comes across a former school principal, an Afrikaner school principal, and you know that you know these are people from, though they are from the same generation, they lived worlds apart. You know, one was white and Afrikaner, another was black, and he quote unquote knew his place. What is it
So,
that
Don,
they can?
yeah, Don, I'm going to interrupt you there simply because
Sure.
we're on a time schedule. I just wish that
Yes,
we had
yes, yes.
an hour
Yeah.
to speak to each of our authors. But I think
Okay.
that's really the essence of your story, is that these
Yes, yes.
friends, Miller and Bra Levy, get together and they seem to be adversaries, but the more one reads, the more there is some kind of common understanding between them. And I just wanted to ask you, it really is also a story of South African history and a sense of South Africa's story. Do you
Yeah.
feel that these stories are becoming lost? Is that something you wanted to focus on? Because by, you know, yeah.
The custodians of these stories are petering out. They are dying, like Bralivai and the people at Nirvana. You know, and Nirvana in my head is based on an actual old age home in my hometown in Krugersdorp, which is now called Mohale City. You know, the people who have these stories, as happens with all other stories, you know, the stories of 1976, the stories of 1960, you know, the voortrekker, maybe before then, the Boer War. These people are dying, as you know, they're getting old, they are dying. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Don. I'm going to leave it there, but I think in a
Yeah.
sense that is the beauty of the story, is it captures this essence of stories and makes the point that these stories are dying. So the last thing to do is, could you just read us a couple of paragraphs just so we get a sense of your story?
Can I do if you will permit, I will read the opening and the closing paras. Is that fine?
I would love to say yes, but I think
Okay. Because
just the opening.
I speak too slowly, and it will. Yeah. Let me start. The
And
opening
then
goes down.
people must buy the book to read the rest.
The opening only. It reads thus. This camp. She no longer wears the name tag that introduces her to the world as Clara. Even the management addresses her as Discam, the chemist. She is Discam because her work is to call her charges to gather around her trolley 3 times a day in order to deliver their medication. Fisher, Moolman, Naidu, Mazibuko, Palmer, De Kock, Moore, Senegal, Coutier A, Coutier H, Mashego, Van Wyk, Van Deventer, Duploy C, Duploy JJ, Nel, Molapo, all 38 of them. There are those in frail care and unable to ambulate themselves to the trolley out in the sun. So she takes the medication to them in the comfort of their rooms. A childhood bout of polio has left her with diminished use of her legs. So she hates walking as much as those octogenarians and nonagenarians in her care. But the 3 times she sees them per day are the highlight for her and for many of the old people for whom the day could otherwise have been dread. Even the infirm are often seen wheeling themselves on their walking contraptions to go gather around this camp. She knows almost by heart who takes which tablets for high blood pressure, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, the odd flu, or whatever ailment is associated with advanced age. No, not those pills. You are on Adalat, Mr. Parker. She chides once too often when someone insists on taking tablets not prescribed. No. I end there.
Thank you so much. And over to you again, Karina.
I would like to welcome Jana van Niekerk with us. Jana, can you please unmute yourself? Is she with us? I saw her earlier. Yes, hello, Jana.
Yeah.
Okay. Jana van Niekerk first published in high school, where she won a national prize for the best creative essay in her matric exam. She studied English, drama, and psychology and holds a doctorate. Her short stories and poems can be found in Sentimental Literary Quarterly, New Contrast, A Hudson View, Aerodrome, and Kotas, and in collections such as For the Duration and The Garden of the Beloved. She has released children's books and romance novellas under different names, and has a first novel in press. Writing makes her happy. Hello, Jana. Lovely to see you. You are one of the writers I worked with whom I actually know in real life, so I recognize your face. Jana, your story is called Trist, and it's and I'm going to probably blush saying this, and hopefully the cameras won't pick this up. It's the most erotic story I've read in my entire life, and I've read quite a few. It is a remarkable story, and what I find so beautiful about it is that it is erotic, but it is also very literary. And the way you combine these two elements is very striking. So one is entertained, enticed, and also just aesthetically pleased when reading. And I wanted to ask you, what is the key for you to writing great erotic literary fiction?
That's a big question. I think probably instinct, Karina. I wrote the story just by starting it and seeing where it would go. So allowing fancy to take you and not putting any restrictions on yourself, seeing what arises and having fun with it, I suppose.
And can you tell us a little bit about your main character?
Yes, he is a photographer, and the story takes place in two parts. So in the beginning of the story, we have what happens from his perspective in a particular liaison with somebody. And in the second half of the story, we are from a woman's perspective, a different woman, and she meets him under very different circumstances. So we see her impression of him, and we've also known his impression of himself and his experience.
Can you tell us, because this is one of the things that we worked on. I thought when I first encountered the story, it was under a different title. And I think that the story of the title is very interesting. So could you tell us why the previous title and now this one?
Yes, sure. So previously I called it Showgirl, which you found a little bit obscure. And I think I was having a private joke with myself, really, because I felt that a writer is a bit of a showgirl sometimes, look at what I can do and look at this and so on. But Tryst is more about the connections that we make with one another, some of them illicit and interesting and risque.
You say in your note about the story that no matter how you tried to keep it out, love snuck in. Does it always happen?
Sometimes I think love is all I write about in its many guises and forms. And what I loved about writing the story is it really did its own thing. And it surprised me at the end what happened and made me laugh. And I realized, oh, there's some magic here. There's some potential here that I didn't put in consciously.
Well, it made me also laugh and smile and blush, and I'm still blushing. So can we please have your 2 or 3 paragraphs from the story?
Yes, thank you. I did the lighting myself because I found that it mattered, made all the difference. You didn't necessarily notice it, but when you were watching the movie, you weren't in a cold room. The soft edges, the warmth, it influenced how you felt. I didn't kid myself that this was artistry or think there were people out there appreciating me for it. Have you ever read the credits in a porn movie? I rest my case. But some of the stills were beautiful. The stuff I did for magazines, well, it was a pity it got thrown away. Then again, I knew the images I created stayed with people, for years even, perhaps for life. Boy, they stayed with me. Take Thursday, for example.
Yes, and what happened on Thursday, you will have to read the book to find out. Thank you, Jana. And I would like to welcome now Nontobeko Mtshali with us. Hello, Nontobeko. Will you please unmute yourself? Hello.
Hi, Karina. Hi, everybody.
Hello. So lovely to see you again, even though it's not in person. The first and only time we met was at another launch because you featured in a book that I published. So hello again. Lovely to see you. Nontobeko Mtshali is a recovering journalist. Coffee, long walks, and writing creatively after hours keeps her sane. By day, she's the founder and managing director of Magalela, is that how you pronounce it, or am I pronouncing it wrong?
Correct.
Yeah, Magalela Media Services, a company that provides content production and communication services to higher education institutions. And Nontobeko, your story also has erotic elements in it, but they have a much darker undertone. It's called For a Fee. And can you tell us a little bit how I think your story grew out of your journalistic experiences, but it became a fiction, a short story. And do you think that perhaps a short story is a better vehicle to have more impact when you are telling stories of such nature?
It's interesting you should ask me that, because this story in particular is a section of a longer manuscript, which I'm so terrified to complete because I just get heart palpitations every time I have to sit down and do it. So when I saw the call for submission, I realized I could use the first 3 chapters as a story by itself because it ends on a cliffhanger. And so it turned out perfectly, and I was able to tell that story quite in a more constrained manner than I had initially thought. So it remains to be seen. That longer manuscript is still there. I don't know how else I'll massage it into completion, or maybe pull other things and publish, differently. But that first part, it proved to be quite effective in the way that we did it through this book. So it could have been both. And for now, we had the chance to do it in the summarized version, and I think it's worked out marvelously. Ooh, can you guys hear me? Am I frozen?
No, but there's a delay in the sound, but we can hear you very well. Okay. When we as adults, whenever we talk to young people, we always say that you have to get educated because education is supposed to offer you a way out of all kinds of life circumstances, and that it offers you a better chance at life. But in the case of your main character, what happens is that education is actually something that puts her in a very precarious position. Could you tell us a little bit about that dynamic and the social and political, historical by now, the circumstances that the story came from?
Those layers are things that I experienced as a student, as well as a journalist interviewing students, particularly during the time where what we saw with Fees Must Fall was a culmination of things, of years worth of unrest. And I had the privilege of witnessing that as a journalist. At the time, I was an education reporter. And like clockwork, whenever universities announced the fee increases, that we protest in certain universities. And what we saw in 2015 with Fees Must Fall was a culmination of that. So every time when those protests would break out, us in the newsroom as journalists at the time, we'd head out to the universities, interview students. And obviously students are there, they are educated, some are there first, second, third year, who are in that education system and are being enhanced academically. But because, for example, they are, beneficiaries of financial aid, they depend on the dynamics that are outside of their control, which is NSFAS and other available funding. Some funders give you fees for a year, and then the next you're left in the lurch. And so you have your education, but there is a whole socioeconomic elements that you just have no control over. So this story was just me going down that rabbit hole because I saw firsthand what young women, even when I was at race, had to do to just eat. And they were studying, they were getting, they were progressing academically, but other things had to happen in order for them to have food and be able to go to class with, with a full tummy. So this story was me going down that rabbit hole with my own experience of what I'd seen, plus what I'd heard as I was interviewing students during those years as a journalist.
Okay, and will you please give us a taste of your story? So could you please read a few paragraphs?
Alrighty, thank you. I paid little attention to the protests on our campus and others around the country. Task teams, commissions of inquiries whose recommendations might or might not be implemented were not going to put food in my belly or pay the rent. 2 weeks had gone by since I went from Senenhlanhla Nkosi, a Bachelor of Accounting Science student at Witwatersrand University, to a desperate dropout. I paid enough attention to the mayhem to understand that the university, like others around the country, had accepted hundreds of students in need for financial aid under the impression that their tuition would be covered by the National Financial Aid Scheme. The numbers were based on the precinct states in previous years. This year, however, the scheme didn't have enough money, leaving thousands of students, me included, in the lurch. After the protests, arrests, and a few burnt buildings, many students eventually gave up and opted to go back home, knowing there was no way they'd be able to afford registration, tuition, and the tuition fees that would enable them to enroll, let alone cover their residential costs. I didn't even entertain the thoughts of going back home. Ma's initial reaction was that I didn't have a choice. I told her I'd rather stay in Johannesburg and look for work. There was more opportunities in the city of gold than in a small KZN Dorpi. Even she couldn't argue with that. That is me.
Thank you so much. We still have a delay of sound and you speaking, so we could still see you speaking, but the sound has ended. So thank you so much. I wish you all the very best with the rest of the project, because that cliffhanger at the end really wants one to find out more and what happens to this woman. So thank you so much. I would like to introduce next Karen Jennings. Karen, if you could please unmute yourself. Karen Jennings is a South African author whose novel An Island was longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2021. Her most recent novel, Crooked Seeds, was published in 2024. And we just a few days ago heard that it made it to some very interesting best of 2024 lists, including a crime novel. Maybe you can speak about that a little bit, Karen. Karen is currently writer in residence as a postdoctoral fellow at the Laboratory for Economics of Africa's Past in Stellenbosch, and where she explores history through fiction. She is also the co-founder of the Island Prize for Debut African Novels. And I believe that the call for new manuscripts is going out very soon. So if anybody who joined us for the launch has a debut novel in their drawer, they must then contact the Island Prize after the launch. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. I'll just say the Island Prize is opening for submissions on the 1st of January. We're changing the submission date slightly from how it's been in previous years. So 1st of January, so you can write your way through Christmas and the Old Year's Eve and those times when you're supposed to be celebrating, you can be working on your novels.
Karen, your story is called Incident, and in the note about it, you say that it is partly autobiographical, and you have in the past you have written a fictional, an autobiographical novel. You have also been very honest, and you made yourself quite vulnerable in the poetry collection that you have published. So you are no stranger to autobiographical fiction. And I wonder, what is your relationship to autobiographical writing? Does it feel like something more precarious for you, or is it something that you actually enjoy exploring?
You know, I suppose I don't approach it in a very cerebral manner. I just sit down and do it. It's only afterwards that I think, oh, I must be incredibly self-obsessed to be writing about myself like this. And I probably am. And I think that one of the things, because I do suffer from depression. I have ever since I was a little girl, in fact. And one of the things that does happen when you suffer from depression, I think that you are constantly inward looking. It's not that you are selfish in the sense that you want others to suffer, but you are very much aware of your own self in the world and what you are experiencing. And I suppose it's just trying to understand that self and my place in the world and what that means, if it means anything at all. But there's also a real distance. I never feel particularly like I'm writing about myself. It's that other person, even if it is entirely true, it's still someone else.
Your story is set in an institution where somebody in a very, very vulnerable position is admitted, and she's basically on suicide watch. And I'm not going to spoil what the incident of the story is by referring to it, but I was wondering, to what extent for you does storytelling feature in a kind of as a kind of intervention in dealing with mental health?
Well, my whole life, it is the thing that gets me out of bed. If I am depressed and I see no point in living, or everything is terrible, I can't function, yes, I might be in bed for several days. I might be really moping around, or, you know, just in a bad way. But eventually it is the writing that pulls me back to some kind of life where I come back, I sit at my desk, I write, I can escape from myself. Even when I'm writing about myself, it's an escape from myself.
And does reading other people's stories, whether fictional or non-fictional, does that also have an element of for you of kind of pulling yourself out of difficulties?
Yeah, it depends on what I'm reading. There's certain books that, and the type of book, the quality of the book, that can really make me excited about life, or want to get up and go and write. But I think we've all had the experience where we pick up a book and we think, what is this shit? How can this have been published? It's terrible. I hate it. If this is what's being published, then there's no place in the world for me and my writing. And I think that happens to all of us. I mean, I've said this before, my own sister thinks that my writing is the most boring, horrific stuff. She won't read it. So, you know, to each his own.
The best of 2024 lists across the world disagree. So can we have a taste of your story, please?
Sure. I'm just going to read the first paragraph because my paragraphs are quite long. The books I had brought with me were taken away after the incident. I was told that if I wanted to read, I had to go down to the communal lounge and sit with everyone else. There was an assortment of books that had been donated or left behind, though there were not many, only enough to take up a quarter of the shelf at the bottom of the TV cabinet. The rest of the shelf held incomplete puzzles, worn packs of cards, and a couple of broken remote controls. Books could not be borrowed, had to be read in the lounge to keep them from going missing. But the lounge was noisy, everyone talking happily as though they weren't all here for a reason.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to then ask Werner to join us.
Yes, hello everybody.
Hello, Jana. And I will have to ask you, because I know that there are two very specific ways of pronouncing your last name. So which way do you pronounce the South African way or the French way?
Definitely the South African way, Labuschagne.
Okay, Werner, welcome. Werner was born and raised in Johannesburg and holds a master's degree in English literature from University of Johannesburg. He currently enjoys lecturing, but wakes up early every morning to wrestle with words before he faces his students. His work has appeared in the flash fiction anthology In Other Stories and in Woman and Home magazine, and he's a regular contributor to Getaway magazine. Werner, your story is very much, it's called Her Voice, and it's a historical story. So you go back into the Hadida are uploading on my side. So you go into South Africa's past, into a period that was very troubled historically, politically, and you tell the story of a young musician trying to find a connection with other musicians across the color bar. And can you tell us, why does it feel relevant to you to tell a story of such a historical story of such nature today?
That's a very good question. So I think, of course, issues of race and the politics of the past still haunt us today. I think they are inescapable. And when I first started writing the story, I was actually brainstorming with my partner, and we were thinking about YOLO, and we were thinking about our relationship, how it couldn't have existed during apartheid, or you would have had to be very brave for that relationship to exist. So that's sort of where the story started. And I used to play drums, and sort of I like the South African jazz scene, and I sort of thought that's a great setting for that story. And then the sort of romance didn't have time to develop in the short story, and the main character Willie became exposed to apartheid and had to question sort of the ways he's perhaps complicit or complacent within the system. Whereas other people, what does YOLO mean for somebody who is oppressed, for example? Can anyone just live their life to their fullest? So that's sort of the historical significance, how I interpreted the theme.
Yes, and also that, you know, your characters initially struggle to connect because they all feel that this is a very difficult situation, and yet they have this incredible passion in common, and that is jazz, and that is music. And music always played a very, very significant role also in the liberation struggle. So can you tell us about this when the language of love is so difficult, how does the language of music then allow us to connect?
Yeah, so there's like a lot of miscommunication between characters. People often don't speak directly. You can't say exactly what is going on, and sometimes there's a disconnection there. But when the characters get onto stage, they all tune into sort of the same spirit and the spirit of music. But then there's also this interesting past of music being used as activism in South Africa, which I got into a lot as well, and use some of that in the short story. So it's sort of a universal language, I guess.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just fall in love with music again, reading your story, because of its power and the power to communicate and to reach out to other people. So thank you so much. Can you please give us a soundbite?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll read from the first page. It was midday when I wandered into the windowless bar. A group of men were playing poker at a park bench. They wore suits with hats to match, despite the hot, cramped space. I was a mismatch in my t-shirt, shorts, and flockies. Ambling up, I tried to introduce myself, but knots tied in my throat. One man spotted me and backed out of his seat. "Who are you?" he asked. I held up my drumsticks in my hand and clacked them together. "A drummer," another man exclaimed. He clambered over the jammed seating to greet me. "Tony," he said with a smile, shaking my hand. From his other hand, cigarette smoke funneled towards my eyes. "Willie." You played jazz. He dragged out the word as if I was a foreign speaker. Not in a band, I swallowed. Never had the chance where I'm from, but I love it. Listen to it a lot, play it by myself. And you are from Bloemfontein, Vrystaat. Just came here a few months back to study. The Vrystaat, he intoned, all the way to Sophiatown. And what jazz do you like in the Vrystaat? Grasping my shoulder, he led me to the back of the bar, rolling his smoking hand, encouraging me to speak.
Okay. Thank you so much, Werner. I would like to now welcome, and I hope that she is with us, Vuyokazi Ngemntu. Are you here? Joanne, do you know whether Vuyokazi is with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, Karina.
Hello, how lovely to see you. Sorry, I only see a very limited list of people, so I don't know who is where. So wonderful to have you with
No
us
problem.
and to introduce
Wonderful to
you.
be here.
Vuyokazi, who goes with the pronouns she, them, is a writer-performer situated in Cape Town, South Africa, whose praxis uses poetry, song, physical theater, storytelling, and ritual to navigate epigenetic trauma and center indigenous knowledge systems in the creation of new Black imaginaries. Her short story, Binnegoed, am I pronouncing it correctly? Oh, I hope we haven't lost Vuyokazi. Anyway, the story was selected as the overall winner of Ibua Journal's Bold Food Regional winner. And more recently, Blood and Ballots made the year's Best African Speculative Fiction Volume 3, and her work has appeared in World Literature Today, the Kalahari Review, Harry, Imbua Journal, also another short short stories anthology, New Contrast, Aka Review, Pepper Coast Literature, and the Cultural Review, among others. So, Vuyokazi, you are widely published author, but you also mention in the note about your story that you have ghost written many stories. In your story that is called Shadow Chasers, you also you are not the ghost writer, but you write about ghosts. Can you tell us about this supernatural element in your story?
Hi, I did see Vuyokazi a moment ago. Are you still with us, Vuyokazi? Yeah, it does seem as if some people are having problems with the link. Yeah, with the connection. So yeah, what a pity. Do I see Vuyokazi anywhere?
I wonder whether I shouldn't just read the opening of the story then, just to give
why
people.
not? I think so.
And if she
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
back, we can ask her a question.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So it is Shadow Chasers. The cab stopped just outside the old factory. Mandisa looked around, intrigued by the Gothic architecture. She couldn't believe she was finally there, where it all happened. What were we waiting for? Asked Joshua. Are you sure it's safe? Well, we came here to get a job done either way, he said, pulling the creaky door handle. The door opened into a passageway. There was hardly any room to walk with the many desks and machinery strewn all over the place. It looked like someone had been planning a move and had to abandon the packing and leave on short notice. Mandisa set up a camera on each corner of the space, while Joshua switched on the auroscope. It doesn't look like the building's been occupied for a while, said Josh, running a finger on the surface of an awkward oak wood desk and is inspecting it. Let's just get on with what we came for, said Mandisa. And what they come for is a ghost. So it's one of the stories in the collection that has this wonderful, fantastical element to it, and it's more speculative fiction. Yeah, it is, and it has also a love story element, and takes our imaginations to planes that are quite fascinating. So I hope that Vuyokazi can join us a little bit later to answer a question or two. But in the meantime, I would like to welcome Megan Tennant. So please unmute yourself, Megan. Hello. Megan is a writer and instructional designer based in Cape Town. She holds a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Cape Town, as well as a master's degree in London School from Queen Mary University of London. She has published poetry in New Contrast, Stanzas, New Coin, Carapace, and Proofrock, and has had a short fiction published in the US literary magazine, The Common. Megan, your story actually has the theme for this anthology in its title. It's the YOLOs. Can you tell us about who the YOLOs are?
Sure. Well, it's quite a difficult question, but without getting into the plot of the story, but they're basically a bit of a clique of typical maybe South African white jock girl that find themselves in Hong Kong. And yeah, it sort of plays on a specific portion of South African expat culture and fitting into that clique who are from the outside living in a very sort of YOLO way.
Mm-hmm. You say that the story was inspired by your own experience, and I remember reading it for the first time and feeling really haunted by it. So I was wondering, is it because you were haunted by the experience of encountering people like that so many years later you felt the need to write about it?
Maybe not necessarily haunted, but quite curious.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, yeah, inspired by my own experience. But I think the character, the main character, occupies quite a different place in relation to a specific kind of subculture, like South African subculture. I think I was quite curious. I did a gap year in Hong Kong, and that's when I first heard the term YOLO. So it feels very Hong Kong gap year, post-university specific to me. And thinking, yeah, curious about how, as a South African, especially that subset of expat culture acts when they're not at home. We become very patriotic and also quite narrow-minded and sort of corralling around certain principles or ideals or othering. And so I was, yeah, maybe a little bit haunted because it disturbed me, wondering if that's just a specific thing of this expat culture, or if it's a natural thing that when you go overseas, you can become quite battened down into your ideas and your people and your community.
Yes. What I found so fascinating is how your characters negotiate the very tricky space of trying to, on the one hand, belong and integrate, and then not to. So can you tell us because there is I feel that your main character doesn't really know initially how to navigate this space, but she encounters people who very much want to be part of the community they find themselves in, and the others who kind of create a little island of South Africanness elsewhere. So can you tell us, can you walk us through those negotiations?
Yeah, I think it was very much trying to figure out the expectations versus reality of the idea of going to another country and trying to make the most of life and experiences. And I think this main character she kind of went in too deep. She thought this is going to be, a YOLO type experience, but the culture shock of different food and different languages and different buildings was difficult for her. And so the idea of then finding some portion of South Africa was how she thought she might redeem that experience. And I suppose without getting it away, it's giving it away. It's yeah, what I was trying to do is play with this feeling almost repelled by what's foreign, when if you're overseas, you're supposed to be wanting to experience what's foreign. And so trying to figure out how she was going to make the most of being away. And I don't know if that necessarily is answered at the end of the story, but at least I think she starts to maybe get a bit more comfortable with being lonely, for example, or being far from home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what I also loved about your story, but I don't want to go into details. I just want to alert the readers that it almost feels historical because of the way your characters start using social media in the story, because it is set about 12, 13 or so years ago, and so you have people using Instagram for the first time, which I found very intriguing when reading about it and thinking, oh my gosh, is it really wow? And now it's so much part of our everyday. Could you please give us a short snippet of the story?
Sure, I'll read the first paragraph. Hong Kong, 2012. What will they tell you when they look back and talk about this time from somewhere else? Cape Town or Auckland or Vancouver, wherever they'll be able to replicate a comfortable life by then. They'll probably say it was the golden time, the time of their lives, before the umbrellas and protests that none of us really followed or understood. What will I tell you? That it starts with the worst jet lag, the sound of the aircon dripping outside Jackie's lounge window. It's already working overtime to fend off the humidity, but not the stench of warm brown egg inside the apartment. I saw the eggs the day before in the 7-Eleven on the ground floor of Jackie and Randall's building. They were simmering away in a dark liquid on the counter by the till. I'd asked Randall what they were after the smell had followed me all the way up the lift and into their flat. 1,000-year-old eggs, he had told me. It's a Hong Kong specialty. They're very good for you. Months later, whenever I smell them, usually when exiting the underground station near my school, I'll think of Jackie and Randall, waking up in their flat 2 days after landing in Hong Kong and wondering what I'd done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. And I believe that Vuyokazi managed to join us again. Vuyokazi, I did read the opening of your story when your connection went down. So may I just ask you a question about your story? And the question that I had was, you have ghostwritten quite a few stories, but this one is about ghosts. Can you tell us about the importance of ghostwriting for your writing and to writing fantasy?
Certainly. Thank you for sharing the snippet that you did with everyone here. I'm terribly sorry about the connection issues. However, to answer your question, it liberated me into being able to express myself fully without any hindrance and any concerns about what the consequences of speaking in certain voices would be in terms of respectability politics. And that, especially in writing about issues that are considered taboo, you're able to express yourself without it coming back to you because that work is not recognized as yours. And I think it freed me as well in order to explore things that I otherwise would not have, and that I considered realism my mainstay before I got into ghostwriting and fell completely in love with fantasy, with magical realism and everything that I've since made home within the SFF genre, speculative fiction and fantasy. So I think that I could credit ghostwriting with giving me the wings to do that, to own it eventually.
And can you tell us, because your two main characters, Josh and Mandisa, are really remarkable. Can you sketch us a little bit for us so that people get an idea of what kind of fantasy they can expect when they go into this magic world?
For sure. So the world itself straddles indigenous knowledge systems, referencing Ubungoma, the craft of healing within the world of sangomas, and herbalism, and trying to locate that knowledge within the context of a fantasy story between two forbidden lovers, really, one of whom is a sangoma, our main female character, Umandisa, and Joshua, who is a werewolf, and locating that story very much within the South African contemporary landscape. Elokishini in Soweto is where the action of the story happens at its climax, and trying to make sense of it as much as possible within a South African context, and trying to balance the ethereal and the visceral embodied experiences of what it means to be an empath, dealing with everything from being sentient to actually allowing disembodied beings to live through one's body. And in this instance, towards solving a crime. So yeah, it is as much as possible trying to create characters that are relatable to everyday South Africans, but still imbuing them with that fantastical aspect of them being outside of the so-called known world of reality.
I absolutely loved how you explore fantasy and how you push the imagination and engage us on those levels. And I can encourage readers to find out whether in this case the shadow chasers, whether in their case love will conquer all or not. So thank you so much for contributing, and I'm so glad that you could rejoin us. Joanne, I think it is now over to you. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we have two other writers that we'd like to celebrate. The one is Khensani Sayiya, but very sadly, because I've seen her come and go off the network, and she says on WhatsApp, it says my network destination doesn't support this app, and now there's a thunderstorm. Please don't end the meeting. I was in first. Poor Khensani is beside herself because she would have absolutely have loved to be here. And what I will say is, Khensani, Don, I mean, you are 60. So am I, by the way. So we share that generation. But Khensani is probably one of our younger writers. And she is, I think, 23. So, you know, this is also something we're trying to do with short, sharp stories is, okay, admit maybe she's going to get on now. Let's see if she can make it. Khensani, let us know when you're here. So just what I was saying is that, you know, we want to celebrate our established authors, but we also are looking to make space for newer writers, newer voices, and Khensani is certainly one of those. So she's an emerging poet and a short story writer and an aspiring playwright. And Khensani was born in Mbombela in a small village called Koboza. And she started writing during high school, deriving motivation and inspiration from the praises of her inspirational teachers, which I think also just shows how important it is to have mentors and teachers. And in 23, she was a fellow in a Funza Literary Trust writing program. And in 24, she published a collection of poetry called I Saw It With My Naked Eye. So Khensani, are you here? Khensani, do I see you?
She's disappeared again, Jo.
Oh, has she disappeared again? Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. Well, Khensani's story, what appealed to us about Khensani's story is that it's about three young boys in a rural landscape who have a disagreement, basically, with the two boys have a disagreement with one of them called Makosi, which is actually means the seer, the great one. And Makosi is finally put to a test in the story. And what I loved about it is it's just something completely different. It's connected to fable, it's connected to ancestry, and it's set in a rural landscape. And Khensani and I spoke about this and said how important it is to have stories that reflect different places, not only the city, not only the more sophisticated places, but the rural landscapes that are so far away, or at least we think they're far away from where we are. And Khensani, she hasn't come back, Trish.
No,
Okay, I think, okay, what I'll do is I'll also just read just the first paragraph of her story. Okay, here we go. It's called The Taste of Mango. I'm in my circle of stones, feeling the light sweat on my skinny body. I gasp as I clutch my arms tight around my knees, forcing my legs to be still, but I feel my body do what it wants, and I stand unsteadily as if I have just gulped down a jug of Ibia. I see the hills spinning and many stars behind my eyes, flashing and vanishing. My mouth is dry, turned grey, and my lips are cracked. The unsympathetic sun roasts my light-skinned tone, hence it has changed over the 10 summers I have been here to the color of my black African hair. Nature does nothing to help. The forest has fallen. Any leftover trees have been standing still for years with their lifeless branches, and they bear no fruit. I survive by drinking my urine during the day and sneaking to the plots of the neighborhood villages at night to dig for roots. The problem is the line of dry trees, once healthy trees, that were planted long before I was born, prevent people from my settlement from stepping across the boundary into their part. And so the story continues to highlight the plight of Makosi, who has really been ostracized from his community. But when he meets these boys who are carrying mangoes, there seems to be some kind of connection between them, and the story develops from there. So Khensani, I'm so sorry that you aren't with us, but we will definitely have to do some in-person launch somewhere in order to celebrate all our wonderful writers. And then the last story in the collection is called Immortal, and that is by Chidiso Moletsane. It's a very poignant story because, as we know, Chidise is no longer with us. It's a great loss to the literary world and to South Africa. His debut novel, Junks, published by Penguin Random House in 2021, was the winner of the Sunday Times Fiction Award in 2022. And it is just such a tragedy that Chidiso is not with us. At the end of his story, we included a quote from Junks, and it goes like this. I am balance, I am opalescent. All around me, instead of mere people, I see celestial bodies. I feel like we are the center of the universe. I exist, and then I don't. And then I do again. I think I died. I want to die again. I want to die 1,000 times. So I hope that we have Lerato Moletsane with us. Lerato, are you here? You are here, great. Can you unmute yourself, Lerato? Okay. Yeah, will you unmute? Is that Lerato? Wherever Lerato is. Ah, there we go. Hi, Lerato. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to publish this incredibly poignant story, which is basically a eulogy. The young character says a eulogy at a friend's funeral. So it's especially poignant because of that. And we just want to say that we are with you in this. We just wish it wasn't so. We wish Chidiso was here to answer some questions and read his story. And I just, without putting you on the spot at all, no pressure at all, but would you like to say a few words on his behalf, or even just about how you are?
That's my favorite quote from the book. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's my favorite quote from the book. I remember in December when the call to submit for YOLO, when we saw it, and I saw he asked you, right? He sent you a message asking he's not sure that the theme, I mean, what he wants to write about will be according to the theme, but you said no, go ahead, just, we want to see what you're writing. And I don't think I'm ready to read Tiriso, because if I do, it's like, there's a confirmation that he is no longer here. And when you said that this was published posthumously, it's also just kind of break me, because it's not something that I'm ready to hear. So I wish he was here to tell us why he wrote it. He wrote that, and I feel like, again, maybe it was his way of maybe just saying goodbye. I think he knew that he will not be here, and miss him every day. Miss him every day. But thank you for publishing Immortal. And I believe that we will keep hearing about Sidiso for, many years to come. Thanks, Karina, and thanks, Joe.
Oh, thank you so
Lerato.
much. Thank you, Lerato. Yeah, and you are also an alumni of our Short Sharp Stories family. So, we just, all I can say is we just hold you and keep you in our thoughts. And Karina, would you like to say something?
I would just like to say that thank you for allowing us to continue sharing his words. And also, you are a writer yourself, and you write yourself. So it is so wonderful that even in the sadness that we all feel, we can celebrate the beauty of his writing and to celebrate it with you. It's a great honor, and thank you so much for contributing in such a way.
Thank you.
And then I thought I would just read a couple of paragraphs. So Lerato, I know that you haven't been able to read him. I don't think I would be able to either. I can fully understand that. So are you able to listen if I read? Is that okay for you? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a dream I was immortal, and I cried every day. This is my first time doing one of these, and I wonder how many more I'll deliver. I wonder who will deliver mine. 3 people came up here before me, and they all ended up crying as they gave their final words to our departed friend. I haven't cried in years. I think I was 9 years old when I attended a funeral for the first time. My great-grandmother, whom I was incredibly fond of, died late one night. How the story goes is that the family were up watching the news when she started having trouble breathing. She started to cough, and then she fell from her seat. The story goes that she was tensing up and shaking and coughing. She was hunched over, her elbows bent and hands clutched tightly, like a pugilist all ready to defend herself. Her granddaughter, not my mother, called an ambulance, but my great-grandmother said, "No, it's fine, it's all right." When the medics finally arrived to take her, she demanded they leave her home, but she was carried into the ambulance anyway and taken to the hospital against her will. She protested the whole way there, and in a final act of defiance, she died before they arrived. She had struggled towards the end with Alzheimer's. She had forgotten all our names, so we had to introduce ourselves to her every time we entered her room. I'd bring tea to her bedside, and she'd say, "Now, who are you?" "I'm Neil, Mickey's son." And she'd reply, "Who's Mickey?" And so it goes on as Chidiso explores other funerals that he's been at, other people in the family who've died. And he also does it with a beautiful humor at times and an incredible sensitivity. And it's just such a heart-rending story, because I just would have loved to have read more of his work. And I loved Junks. I've got it on my bookshelf. And it just seems that such a young author is, well, definitely just gone too soon. And there just are no words except Lerato to say that we're with you, and we will continue to celebrate Tshidiso and his wonderful writing, and you as his mother. And really, I mean, I suppose when one considers YOLO, ultimately the relationship between life and death is the most tenuous and is the most beautiful. And yeah, it's a very, very fitting story to end our collection. So I think on that note, I just want to thank everybody for your brilliant collections, your brilliant contributions rather to the collection. I hope this evening and the first evening has given everyone a sense of the range of story. And I'm just listening and thinking, oh, I just wish we could do one of these every few months. I'd love to do a fantasy collection. Maybe that'll be next. Yeah, but yeah, so thank you. And as soon as the book is out, we'll be announcing the winners then. So the process is still not over. And I will send you your copies as soon as I have them in my little space. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for your words and for your presence. And we look forward to reading more of your stories and just being a community of writers supporting one another, and supporting the South African story and the South African life. And I think that's it. Karina, a last word to you.
Just gratitude. It is always so exciting to read stories by local writers, and I think that this collection is a wonderful, wonderful example of the incredible talent in the country, and I think I cannot imagine a reader who will be disappointed by picking up this book. So thank you so much for all your contributions and for being here tonight.
Thank you.